welcome to the MVP Show. Today's guest is Gus Gonzalez. He is the CEO of Elevate Solutions. He has over 52 certifications in his career and well over 20 honors and awards, making him an industry-recognized expert in Dynamics 365 and Office 365. He has his own podcast as well called CRM MVP Podcast, well worth checking it out. Remember, full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/221. Now let's get on with the show. Hey Gus, welcome to the MVP Show.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, good to have you on the show and really learn about your story. But before we get underway, tell us, if anybody doesn't know, what part of the world do you hail from, and where did you originally come from? What's your background?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Venezuela. I lived there until I was 22, and I graduated college in 2003 and started my own business from the beginning. I'm a computer engineer, so I started, working with servers and all that stuff. But man, like the politics and the situation in the country was getting really, really bad. So I essentially sold everything I had and I moved to the States, which, was a really good decision for me. I only had a bag of clothes and $3,500 in my pocket. And it was kind of like, let's just go and see what happens. And worst case situation, I'll learn some English because I came here without speaking English too, back in 2005.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, little by little, I kind of worked my way up. So here I am.
That's crazy. So what about family? Did your family move to the US with you, or are they still in Venezuela?
Well, no. So when I moved in 2005, they stayed behind. I was single. I came by myself, and later on, when I became a citizen in 2010, I sponsored my parents so they could come and move here as residents, and my brother came too. So my immediate family's here now. But my actual family, my wife, my kids, they were all, here. I met my wife here. I came here single. So yeah.
What are your thoughts of home and how Venezuela is today? Do you ever go back? Or, is it impossible to go back nowadays? What's the story?
I don't think it's impossible to go back. I just don't see the point on going back. I haven't been there since 2007, I think is the last time I went, which is, the year I got my green card. So I was sort of like, okay, cool, I can go back. And I went back and I visited my family and stuff, and things were already bad. Like just 2 years later, I can't even comprehend how things are today. I honestly don't know if I can even go back. Once I received my citizenship, my U.S. citizenship, I renounced my Venezuelan citizenship. So I'm not really sure how that works. If I'm able to go back, I assume you can, because you can bribe everyone in Venezuela. So I'm sure they'll let me in. But yeah, the country's a total disaster. It was a disaster before coronavirus too. So it's not like this did anything for it. It's just really, really sad situation to see one of the richest country in South America now be one of the worst, countries in the world in terms of violence and poverty and all that stuff. So
tell us about, you came to America and you couldn't even speak English. How has it been for you from one, getting educated from English speaking perspective, and then really establishing yourself in the American culture?
Yeah, I think, before I came here, I felt that I identified a lot with this country. I really, really valued the fact that in order to get what you want, you need to work hard for it. Whereas I grew up in a country like many other countries on earth that a lot of people realize that it's a lot easier to steal something rather than work hard in buying it. And that happens obviously in a lot of places. So when I came here, I knew one thing. I knew that I wanted to outwork everyone. I wanted to work hard for what I wanted. And because of that, when I came here, the first thing I did was, with the $3,500 that I had, I wanted to survive as long as possible. And I found an internship because I couldn't work. I wasn't a resident yet. And I found an internship where I got to work for free, essentially, for a computer school consulting company. And the only thing they offered me was, look, you can take any class you want for free. And, we'll essentially, you can sit on any class you want. And And then they gave me also free vouchers to take exams, Microsoft certification exams and Cisco and whatnot, all the classes they taught. So I took that chance, and for a few months I would work there for free from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. And then I would stay for night classes all the way till like 10 or 11 p.m. So I would just spend all day there, either learning to work with their computer systems and servers and all of that, or learning new things from, the Microsoft perspective. Back in 2005, MCSE was like super, super hot. So I did all my MCSE and all those certifications and stuff with Microsoft and Citrix and CompTIA and like a lot of different companies, Cisco and whatnot. So yeah, just by diving in and forcing myself to be there, all day, every day, pretty much. I picked up English pretty quick. I think I started over there like in August of 2005. And I think right around January or February, I was already teaching classes. Obviously my accent was not the best. I struggle a lot, but a lot of people in Miami have a pretty strong accent anyway. So I think I was able to fly under the radar on that. And then just little by little, I started losing the accent and whatnot. That's the thing with our industry is I didn't get a chance to really interact with a lot of Spanish speakers anyway. So it really helped me kind of pick it up super fast.
So how did you get into biz apps? What was it? How did you get exposed to them? And then what's been your journey?
I think like most people, it was a coincidence, luck, I guess. Again, by the time I moved to Atlanta, which is the city where I am right now, I moved here because I got married and my wife was going to school here in Georgia, and Georgia is a beautiful place to raise a family. So I decided to leave Miami and come here. And when I came here, I started a job as a full-time trainer for New Horizons, which is a big computer school globally. And that was 2006, and I started teaching for them. I taught until 2008 when the whole economy went down globally. And so they had to let me go, close a bunch of locations. They let go most of the instructors as well. And, because I was teaching pretty much everything Microsoft made with the word server on it, I was contacted by a company, a partner that needed a technical expert. They did CRM implementations, but they needed someone who really understood how dynamic CRM interacted with other servers and how it dealt with security and all that stuff. So I said, look, I don't know a whole lot about Dynamics. I installed it at the company I was working for in Miami. I was the administrator for a while, but I don't know it at that level, like technical expert level. And they said, you'll learn that stuff, but you already know SQL and Exchange and SharePoint and security and all that other stuff. So that's what we're looking for. So they hired me as their technical lead. And all I did was just make sure from the technical perspective, the CRM implementations were done successfully and they worked and to the best performance and whatnot. But I always wanted to work with the actual customers. I was always interacting with the IT departments of our customers. I never really worked with users. So after a couple of years of just me begging them to give me a shot at being a consultant and a functional consultant or an implementer, essentially, they wouldn't give me a chance. And at the same time, the CRM version that we were installing, which was 4.0 in 2011 back in the day, it was mainly on premise. They would refuse to work with online. And I really thought that the cloud was where things were going. So I found this other company who decided to give me a shot. I took a pay cut to become a consultant, user facing essentially, which is what I wanted. And they were exclusively implementing CRM Online. So I took that shot, and that's how I started as a functional consultant, eventually solution architect, and what I'm doing right now.
Wow. So when you talk about all that service side of things, because this was back in the day where you had to connect to Microsoft Exchange, which is now just part of Office 365, SharePoint, which is just part of Office 365. You had to set up SQL, front-end, back-end servers, all that kind of stuff everyone takes for granted now and online. You actually had to configure and make those all talk together to install CRM back in those days, right?
Yeah, not only install it, I mean, you were coming into a customer that had already a bunch of different systems, and you needed to make sure that whatever you did would not break whatever they had. And in some cases, they were big implementations, 5,000 users in 4 countries or whatever. And you had, you have to implement a cluster that works with their clustering technology, whether they were using VMware or Hyper-V or whatever. Like it was a deeply, deeply technical job. And I had to deal with Active Directory, domain control. I had to deal with a lot of things that the customer already had. So they really, really needed someone who understood a lot of different technologies. I mean, I was certified to work with Citrix. I was certified in Cisco. I knew, like I said, everything that Microsoft made with the word server on it. So that's why, they hired me to do that. But I was happy when I made the transition to work with users as well. I mean, I love being in front of people and working like that. So I never regretted making a move from being super technical to being more functional.
So tell me, what's been kind of the big highlights in your career, or even projects in your career? What are they, and why do they stick out in your mind?
I mean, I think that when I think about highlights, I always think about projects that kind of convince me to focus on specific companies when it came to implementing Dynamics 365. And what I mean by that is, after implementing, a couple hundred of implementations with Dynamics, I think I did about 170 or so with the partner that I was with at the time. One of the things that you start noticing by working with a lot of different companies, and we were in a horizontal model, so we weren't working on a specific vertical, is that certain companies would be really, really hard to get it right and to be successful with the implementation. And then for certain companies, you were almost always going to get it right, and the users were going to adopt it and they were going to love it. So the first project I remember that was highly, highly successful is when I implemented Dynamics CRM 2011 for the Project Management Institute, which is a big organization. And we implemented it globally. So I had to deal with users in China and all of the rules and laws from Chinese government. We also had locations in Europe, in the US, and Mexico. And anyway, so it was a global implementation. But one of the things that I really, really liked about that project is the way in which they wanted to work, which is they wanted to be heavily involved in their implementation. They had some bad experiences in the past where they paid companies to come in and implement something, not just Dynamics, but other software. And the company would go ahead and do it, and at the end show them what they had done, and they weren't happy with it. They said, this is not what I thought I was going to get. And, this company, PMI, this organization, decided that they wanted to be heavily involved. They were so involved, in fact, that the main CRM administrator is now a consultant, a Dynamics 365 consultant. So he saw what we did there, and he was like, man, I really, really enjoy this stuff, and I want to do what you do for a living. And after being like a CRM admin for like a year or something like that, he graduated from the CRM administration black belt program, which I created, and he pursued a career as a consultant. He's a consultant right now. He's been a solution architect for years now. And, then I got to work with Hard Rock Cafe, which is global as well. And I did their implementation for customer service. So it was interesting to see an organization that is so massive and with high volumes as well. But, one of the things that I noticed is that even though these guys are massive and have humongous volume of tickets and things like that, because they want to be involved, they were also successful. So that's when kind of I started thinking about, I should really start a company that only work with companies that want to be involved in their implementation. And if you don't want to be involved, if you just want to pay somebody to do it, we're not the right partner for you. So that's how Elevate Solutions came to be. I started the company in 2014, and we've been rocking and rolling since then.
The MVP award, from memory, you and I got awarded in the same year. So some years ago. How has that impacted your life, career, that type of thing? What was particularly back then? Because it changes with time. The I suppose the benefits or the kudos, etc., goes with it. But what was the big impact for you in those first couple of years of getting your MVP?
I mean, I think that getting the MVP award really opened a lot of doors for you. I think that the misconceptions around the MVP award can work in your favor if you're an MVP. One big misconception, and we've talked about this before, is that MVPs know everything and they are experts in everything that Dynamics does, which is not true. You and I know that is not true. But people see it that way. And because of that, they constantly push me to be a speaker in different, events, to write blog articles and things like that. Like I remember, for example, when I was meeting with Microsoft and I mentioned that I had, so far that year, I had done, I don't know how many migrations from Salesforce to Dynamics CRM back in the day. And they're like, oh, you know what? You should write an article about this or a blog article about this. And I wrote it and they loved it. Right. So they pushed me to write and to, go and speak at sessions and things like that. So that really was an advantage. And for me, obviously, the more I am in front of people, one of the things that people can tell when they attend my sessions or they listen to the podcast or whatever it is that I speak my mind. I tell you exactly what I think. I don't sugarcoat things. And I've gotten in trouble in the past a few times because of it. So they like to attend my sessions because I will, be the one speaking about the industry best practices I disagree with and why, or, why I go against sometimes Microsoft's recommendations, and I explain why, and I tell them a bunch of examples of why I say what I say. So people really like that. And when people appreciate honesty and clarity, they typically want to work with you. So the MVP opened doors for me to be able to speak at these events and share, my ideas. And some people really appreciate that. And they have become customers, or they have become partners in the past. Some other partners that attend some of my sessions, they're like, man, we'd really want to work with this guy. And then I've established partnerships because of it. So that is a big advantage of being an MVP for sure.
So for years, you've been known, for delivering multiple sessions at particularly conferences to a very high standard. To, I've been in the room where they've been packed out, standing room only for many times. And in fact, two totally different events are coming to my mind where I walked into your room and that was the situation. What are you doing now with COVID and not being able to, be able to speak and educate, such a wide audience as you're doing? How are you handling now, and what do you think what do you think the world's going to do going forward from these big in-person conference events?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Last year when it came to the largest conferences, I attended the summit, the UG summit, and everywhere it happened. So in Europe, in Australia, and here in the US as well. This year we haven't had any events, right? The European event got moved to June. I think it's happening virtually, and I don't know what happened with the Australian. I assume it's going to happen virtually as well.
Virtual, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing has been announced about the US, but it wouldn't, surprise me if they say it's going to be virtual as well. So definitely not being able to be in front of people. It's, it's a drawback to delivering a message, because my thing is that I never really prepare for these sessions and planning to read from a slide deck or a book or whatever. I really feed from the crowd, from the people in the audience asking questions. And because I'm always honest, I'm going to answer honestly. So I always get really good questions that perhaps they know that if they ask someone else, they're not going to answer, right? So obviously being remote in this case, it really hinders my impact. But obviously the YouTube channel that we have, CRM MVP Media, which you've been featured on, and it's for all MVPs, not just me, but the CRM MVP podcast as well, where other MVPs have been featured. You were featured actually in our #1 episode of all time. Allows me to continue to share that message. And it's kind of hit or miss. It's weird because when you go to a summit, you submit sessions and then like a panel votes on them. And so if a session is successful, in part is thanks to a panel who believed that session was going to be successful and believed someone should talk about that at the conference. So I owe it to them to allow me to go and share, my message. But when it comes to creating your own videos and stuff, it's hit or miss, right? Sometimes we put out episodes out there that I think are going to be a total smash hit. And then, we get 40% of downloads or people listening in. And then we put I put a video about the new file field, for example, that you can do now with CDS. And it's like our, second or third most watched videos after over 100 videos, right? So, sometimes I release stuff. I don't know how people are going to receive it. I think that if you look at the statistics about the videos and the podcast and all of the content that is out there, you can see how hit or miss it is. And when you go to one of these events and every session is good, is thanks to a panel that agreed that those sessions should be delivered. And you know that process because you've been on a panel too. So I enjoy that.
Microsoft has said no more conferences till mid next year, which means MVP Summit for us is gone for another year. They've just had Build with 200,000 people in attendance, over 6,000 last year. They had MBAS, which had about 4,000 to 6,000 last year in attendance, and this year, I think 56,000 people attended. Do you think Microsoft are going to go and spend their money on big conferences anymore rather than doing it virtual when it seems that their money is getting a bigger bite, in the virtual arena?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that it all depends on your objectives. When it comes to MBAS, for example, I can totally see how if their objective is to share what the team has been working on, and we know that MBAS is one of those events where they like to make big announcements and stuff like that, hosting the event virtually really multiplies your ability to share what you've done with the world. I think that you can still do it in person and broadcast online. So I think that you can still have that reach. But if that is all you're looking for, I find it hard to justify doing it in person. The same thing with the MVP Summit, sadly. I mean, the MVP Summit is my favorite event. It's probably your favorite event too of the year. Because we lock ourselves with the leadership and the product team for a few days and try to understand what they're working on and provide feedback that will hopefully make the product better for everyone else out there. Can they do that virtually? Yeah, I mean, I think it's potentially possible to do that effectively virtually. But, for me, for example, I don't know if it happened to you, this MVP Summit, I get distracted. I get a phone call. Somebody shows up at the house for something. My wife is not there. I have to go open the door. So there were several sessions where I had to step out. Whereas when I am on site at the event, I silence my phone, I pay attention, and I'm able to be more effective providing the feedback that Microsoft is looking for. So price-wise and money-wise, it makes more sense to do something like that virtual, but I don't think it's as effective as having us in person. So I hope that they continue to do that. The UG Summit is the same thing. A lot of people, what they value is that networking, the fact that they can stop by the medics booth and ask questions right then and there, and you get 10, 20 MVPs trying to answer or helping you out with your issue. That is huge, and that's something that you just cannot recreate virtually. So I certainly hope that some of these events for sure will continue to be in person because that's what people value.
So true, so true. It's just, yeah, it's going to be weird. I don't know if we had our last MVP Summit the year before last in person, right? Who knows? We don't know what the pivot will be come next year.
I still feel that we should definitely rent a humongous house in like Antigua or something, and we all get together and watch virtually. But yeah, let's go to an island somewhere and watch with a drink in the hand. It would be awesome.
Yeah, I was talking to Andrew Batanko yesterday, and he was saying the same thing. Why don't we just choose a time of the year, location, and we all go and hang out? Which yeah, I definitely think we should put some wheels on that. Okay, you ready for some quick fire questions? Totally random. As we wrap up this recording.
Let's do it.
Okay, what's your most powerful and vivid memory?
Most powerful and vivid memory? Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if I can answer that. I think that whatever I say, I'm going to think of something else that is more powerful later. But I obviously still remember leaving back in 2005 and like saying goodbye to my parents and not knowing when I was going to see them again. That was definitely powerful.
Would you rather be proposed to in private or in front of family and friends? Now, I know you're already married, but you get the concept here.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think in private makes more sense, even though I'm totally, outgoing and extrovert. But, something like that in private, I did it in private and I think it was the right decision.
Nice. What's the most surprising self-realization you've had about yourself?
I think for me, the biggest thing is that I learned that, good enough is better than perfect in a lot of cases. And I've learned over time that I don't have to be a perfectionist about everything. So that is one thing that I learned. I always thought that in order for me to get over something, it had to be perfect, or else it wouldn't happen. And I think putting out a lot of content showed me that good enough is sometimes, good enough. Post it out.
When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
An astronaut. That was easy. I always imagined that I wanted to be an astronaut. Either that or in sports, be an athlete. Getting paid to play a game is like the best job ever.
Nice. Have you been watching all the SpaceX stuff and NASA stuff the last couple of weeks?
For sure.
Was the past week? Yeah,
for sure.
Right?
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a good, also a good way to distract yourself from all the bad things happening this year, man. This year has been rough.
If you could switch places with one of your friends, who would it be?
That's a really good question.
Just for a day. Just for a day. You can only do it for a day. You don't have to commit to it forever.
Just for a day, I feel like I would really like to switch jobs with perhaps someone from Microsoft in the product team, just to understand what is it that they deal with. And, we've seen some of our friends that used to be on this side as an MVP and then join Microsoft, and they can't talk about it, but they're sort of like, oh man, if you knew the stuff that I have to deal with, that would definitely help me understand what they go through and perhaps adjust the way I provide feedback and ask for things.
Yeah, I like it. Final one here. Which season best fits your personality?
I mean, I think winter. I love the cold, I really enjoy the cold. Yeah, I really, really enjoy cold weather. Iceland is my type of country. Like that's kind of how it works. So I'm typically, when I'm not enjoying the cold, I'm waiting for it to come back. So I enjoy that weather. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought you'd probably be more summer being. You're into scuba diving, you're into shooting, which I thought more outdoorsy, and I know you got a boat on the lake, so I just thought you'd be more a summer guy.
For sure. I enjoy that. I mean, whenever it happens, I welcome those times and look forward to doing that. But it gets a point that is too hot, and you have to look forward to better weather. And scuba diving is kind of an obsession of mine right now. And you can always travel places and use the excuse that it's too cold here, so you can go somewhere else and dive.
So true. Gus, it's been great to have you on the show. Before we go, where's the best place for people to check you out, what you're doing, what you're creating, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think crmmvpmedia.com and crmmvppodcast.com are the two places where you can find not only the stuff that I'm working on, but also the stuff that people like you, Mark, and other MVPs are working on. You guys are always welcome, obviously, to provide content for that. And, I think people find a lot of value on what we post out there because it comes from our own independent minds and best practices and things that we've learned by doing this stuff out there in the world. So again, crmmvpmedia.com and crmmvppodcast.com are the websites for that.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I'd love any feedback you can provide. Feel free to leave a review on your app or iTunes. That would be fantastic. If you want to get some direction around your career and looking at what your options are for the future, feel free to join my 90-day mentoring challenge. It's 100% free, and I use it as a way to help answer questions in the community that often are not answered by one's employer and or who to talk to on the subject of where your career should be going. So I'd love to have you join me. This year alone, over 200 people applied. I actually took 100 people through the program earlier in the year and looking at doing it again in the near future. So if you're interested, go to nz365guy.com /90day MC to register your interest, or go to my website and just click on coaching and mentoring. You'll see the options there. Under mentoring is the free option. Anyhow, have a great week and see you next time.